everybody, for joining. I hope you're all doing well. Let's give it a bit of time. Let's see who joins. Please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. We're here to chat about Freemasonry. Normally on Friday streams, I actually don't have a specific topic. Rather, hello, Linking Atlas. Rather, I just talk about kind of what people on the stream want to talk about. But today, it's going to be a little bit different. I think I'm going to talk about accessible buildings, why it's so important that our buildings be accessible. The reason being, December 3rd, so 2 days ago, was the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. I posted something about that, on my stream, on my social media accounts. Excuse me. So please make sure you follow those. And also, it's very important you follow those because I'm once again traveling next week. It's going to be a blast, but I want to make sure that everybody knows what I'm up to while I'm not live streaming. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow me on Instagram at square_and_compass_promotions. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Blue Sky. Follow me wherever you can in order to know what I'm up to. However, for the time being, let's see who joins. And Linking Atlas, it's great to see you here. I hope that you're doing well. Any plans for the weekend? Anything exciting that you've got coming up? Thank you, Ghost Patrol. And it's wonderful to have somebody from Indonesia. Honestly, have to plead ignorance. I know very little about Freemasonry. I know very little, sadly, about Freemasonry in Indonesia. I wish I knew more. The closest is I've been to Masonic events in the Philippines, which I believe is close to Indonesia. I wish I could learn more. I do know a little bit about Freemasonry when I say Dutch, Holland and kind of that European area. But welcome, Bass Peter. Please like and subscribe. And No Filter Boss. How are you doing? No, there's no violence in Freemasonry, despite the fact that I sometimes may get very passionate. No violence in Freemasonry. 6092. Do you have any thoughts on Freemasonry? Please let me know. Positive, negative, or neutral. I'm going to talk about the main subject, International Day of Persons with Disabilities and Freemasonry. I'm going to talk about that later, about 1 hour in, give or take. I'm glad that you are good. I am doing well also. It's the weekend almost. I got one more meeting tonight, one more meeting tomorrow. Then my somewhat vacation. I'll be doing some business while I'm there as well. I'm sure there's many. Okay. By the way, I got your letter, Dad, so we're all set. Who knows? Maybe what I can do is, I was thinking, might be kind of fun to see if I could get my citizenship ceremony for my British citizenship, if I could actually get it done in Winnipeg, and that way you could attend. So I'll see if I can do that, because I think there might be ways to do it there. Then next thing I need to do is meet a nice British girl, and then complete the circle. Who's currently in the draw for the World Cup? No worries. What did you say, Bass Peter? Because I can't read Dutch. Actually, is Dutch the language? I know, like, there's no Dutch country. It's Holland, and I can't even think of the other countries now. But what did you say? I mean, I can put it through Google Translate, but I'd be really curious if you could let me know. And there's nothing wrong with your Dutch slipping out. I think we in Freemasonry should be supportive of brethren and friends and family and their different languages. Um, so what does Jadat is heel god mean? Okay, cool. So Bas, do you have any questions or any thoughts on Freemasonry? I don't know if you've ever come across it, ever seen it. If you want to let me know where you're from, and if you've seen it in your area. If not, that's no worries. Maybe you have any questions, comments, thoughts on it. Let's give it a bit of time and let's see who joins. And about an hour in, I'll start on the topic of International Day of Persons with Disabilities, more specifically, how we can make sure that we in Freemasonry are being accessible for everyone. That's one of them, right? That's why I put the somewhat in there. A lot of people, Dad, when they first think of accessibility, they think of ramps, automatic doors, washrooms. All of that stuff is very important, but they don't think about things like do they have Braille signage, for example? Oh, so 11. So yeah, you're way too young. First of all, you're too young to be a Freemason, but you probably haven't heard about it. It's a civic group, it's a fraternity, a civic organization. It's been around for about 300 years. So that's the very basic explanation of it. Think about it like a social group or a club, right? In school, I'm sure you have clubs for people with different interests, maybe an audiovisual club, maybe a comic book club, whatever it might be. Freemasonry is just another club. I mean, sure, I don't see why not. Nathan asks, can someone with Down syndrome? I mean, my argument always when it comes to mental health issues, or I don't know what term I would use. Developmental delays, for example, developmental issues, is so long as they are aware of, you know, the decisions that they're making. So, for example, I knew somebody with Down syndrome, really cool dude. He actually worked at a store where I always used to go shopping, close to me. And so I think he had Down syndrome. He had a developmental disability of some sort, but he was super friendly, a super cool dude. He was clearly capable enough and aware enough to be able to, hold down a job and all of the responsibilities that comes with that. So he's able to make decisions and understand the consequences. So long as you can do those two things, then by all means, be more than welcome. Same thing with someone with Tourette's or autism, whatever it is, right? It's about being able to understand the consequences of your decision. I've given this example before, but I have a cousin who has a developmental disability. He's basically, I think he's slightly younger than me. I think he's in his 30s, but basically developmentally, he's a toddler. I think he's maybe 5 or 6 years of age at most, or probably more than that, 3 or 4 years of age mentally, right? And for him, even though he's an incredibly, no, sweet, I was going to say sweet man, but in some ways a very sweet kid, very nice person, I don't think he'd be able to join Freemasonry because I don't think he'd be able to understand necessarily what he's joining or understand fully the obligations or anything like that. Yeah, but you can make it work. I mean, you can definitely, in my opinion, go sleep, Bass Peters, but thank you for being here. With Tourette's, if he's, occasionally having outbursts in Lodge, which he can't control, that's okay. I've had outbursts in Lodge and I could control them and I still didn't. So what does that tell you, right? I'm not going to knock anybody with Tourette's. It is an interesting, and I don't know what the answer to this is. If we have other Masons on, they may be able to answer. Let's say you had somebody like that who physically is of, proper age, but mentally they are forever at toddler age, but their father's a Freemason, and their father really wants them to join to kind of continue on Freemasonry. What do you do? How do you proceed? I suppose what you'd have to do is contact the Grand Lodge and explain the situation and figure out the best way to move forward. Um, it's just an interesting thought. I don't know what the answer to it is. But to me, when it comes to developmental issues, the question that needs to be asked is, can they understand, cause and effect and the consequences of their actions? So long as that's the case, because obviously it's unfair and really cruel for Freemasons to be admitting people into the lodge who don't understand what's happening, right? Just to get the money, basically. I mean, I guess it'd be hilarious. To me, if you have a Mason who has Tourette's, what you should be doing, and they're in lodge, is you should ignore any outbursts, treat it like it's not happening, right? No different than me with my no legs. You pretend like I have legs. And if there comes a point where something needs to be done, like there's stairs or there's an issue, at that point you bring it up and deal with it. But so long as you can maintain the flow of a meeting without acknowledging it, then you don't acknowledge it. Well, you should definitely tell people that, or they should tell people that, right? I mean, within Freemasonry, within civic society, there's certain rules around, disclosure of medical conditions, and really it's not your place to disclose medical conditions to others. But I would hope that the brother with Tourette's or the applicant with Tourette's would advise people of the situation so they know. He's infamous flex. Well, I don't know what you're flexing, but I am in fact a Freemason. If I'm not a Freemason, I've been giving a lot of money to a lot of people for a lot of years for no reason. And when I say a lot, honestly, not that much, but my yearly dues is what I'm referring to, which I pay every year, including just finished paying my dues this year. By the way, it's that time of year. If you are a Freemason, pay your dues, pay them early. Don't make the lodge chase you down. That is going to drive you crazy. Your apartment don't look like you can pay any dues. Why are you knocking my apartment? Where did that come from, Infamous Flex? By the way, Infamous Flex, please hit the like and subscribe button. And what you can always do is you can do a super chat. If you're concerned about my apartment or the lack of decorations in my apartment, then by all means, like, subscribe, and hit the do a super chat. Certain lodges resemble MLMs. Welcome, Gabriel Lee. I think you're new to the stream. When you say MLM, I assume you mean a multi-level marketing scheme. If you ever see any lodges that reflect or resemble an MLM, then it's almost certainly a clandestine lodge, or another way we put it is just a fake Masonic lodge, because they should not resemble MLMs. So you may be seeing or witnessing some clandestine lodges, especially because when you say certain lodges, and I talked about this on my stream a couple days ago, you have to be so careful about Masonic scams. People claiming to be Freemasons or Masonic, in order to get money from people without actually being Masonic recognized or anything else. So you need to be aware of those. Gabriel Lee, when you say resemble, in what way did you mean? Um, Shriner. I'm not a Shriner. I am a Scottish Rite Mason, 18th degree Scottish Rite. I'm not a Shriner. I'm also not York Rite, though I consider going to joining both. Philly, well, that's one thing to say. Philly, please hit like and subscribe. This is not me. How can I remember you when it's not you? Yes, I remember you. Um, I'm definitely not what? Definitely not a Shriner, definitely not a Mason. What makes you say I'm definitely not? I think Infamous Flex, you may have been looking up some stuff online that is incorrect. Yes, typical bachelor apartment. You know, what do you people want from me? This is the fact that, I'm eating regularly is a miracle when you're a bachelor. Just say, I mean, okay, it's possible you don't know what you think you know, especially if your research is reliant upon internet or if you've joined clandestine lodges thinking they were legitimate lodges. Um, right? Infamous flex. It seems to me um, highly unlikely that you know as much as you think you do, especially because honestly, there is no way just by looking on a computer screen to tell if someone's a Mason or not. You kind of got to trust basically my experience as well as what I talk about. But if you're, the idea that you can see somebody and know if they're a Mason or not a Mason, that's one of those myths that exists sometimes even within Freemasonry. The other thing to keep in mind is even if someone's wearing a Masonic ring, has a Masonic jacket, that doesn't automatically mean they're Freemason. Freemasons, excuse me. You still have to do your due diligence because people can get rings, shirts, hats. They can get all sorts of items with the tattoos, even with these square and compasses on them. Sometimes they get them from their family. Sometimes they buy them because they like the design. Um, uh, Sometimes they get them from a grandparent or who knows how they come across them. But just wearing a square and compass doesn't mean it's automatically a Freemason. I am not Jewish, but Freemasonry welcomes men of all different faiths, including Jewish brethren, and they are a wonderful part of the craft. So this is not me. I would not use the term buy. It's not that you can buy a degree, right? Anybody who they did not create the craft vi victe. The craft was created by stonemason guilds in the Middle Ages in England and Scotland, not Jewish individuals, nor Judaism in general. So this is not me. You don't want to think about it in terms of being able to buy degrees because you can't buy a degree. Like if anybody comes to you and says through email or otherwise, give me $500 and you'll be a Mason. That's not how it works. You have to pay for dues, and the dues are. It was not Vi Victi. Um, it's going well, right? The money should be, and when I say money, it's dues, right? Should be the last thing discussed. First, it's filling out your application, it's getting sponsors, it's meeting the lodge members, it's getting to know them. It's discussing why you want to be a Freemason, what Freemasonry is, answering questions um, that they may have, and them answering questions you may have. Um, and so you don't buy degrees, right? You join, you apply, and first of all, it's good character, good morals, believe in a supreme being, things of that nature. After that is when the discussion for dues comes in. 33rd is by invitation. 33rd is a Scottish Rite degree. To be a 33rd degree Mason, you must be invited within. Well, Vi, there's a lot you have to deal with what you said there. I don't know what you think we're doing, but I think you'd be very disappointed if you actually knew what we are doing, which is far more boring than I think might be in your mind. When you talk about the pillars and the lodges, um, uh, My assumption is welcome, noobs revenge. Please hit like and subscribe. You're referring to King Solomon's Temple. Because Freemasonry evolved from stone masonry, uh, Masonic, like stone mason works, are going to be considered very important in our symbology because we would use those for moral lessons. So in our case, King Solomon's Temple is one of them that's considered very important. So are the pyramids, so are certain cathedrals. Um, the checkerboard, there are checkerboards within Freemasonry, yes. There are aprons as well. The aprons also represent stone Masonic guilds. Stonemasons, craftsmen wear aprons to protect their garments from spot or stain. Um, well, I mean, King Solomon's Temple is part of the Bible as well, right? It's not Jewish influence; it's stonemason influence. In the same way, we often talk about, or Freemasonry is often associated with the pyramids. That's not Egyptian influence, that's stonemasonry influence, particularly the stonemason works of the pyramids. Um, well, it's in the Bible as well, right? It's biblical as well. So, look, Freemasonry has been very happy to borrow. Some would say steal. Some would say adopt symbols and ideas and lessons from various cultures, religions, faiths, philosophies from around the world. I mean, it's fascinating, right? Freemasonry is borrowed from Judaism, Christianity, the Muslim faith, Islam. It's borrowed from ancient Egyptian mysticism. It's borrowed from Chinese mythology. It's um, borrowed quite heavily from Stoic philosophy, which is fascinating as well. Um, Obviously, primarily what it borrowed from is stone masonry and stone mason guilds, and craftsmen and journeymen. So, when people say Freemasonry is Jewish, it's not, but Freemasonry certainly has borrowed from a ton of different philosophies and ideas. The Enlightenment era, Voltaire, people like that left a big mark on Freemasonry. Even though he was exclusively a Mason for a month, his ideas, Enlightenment ideas, left a big mark therein as well. So, Freemasonry, as did many groups before and after, was very happy when developing ceremony and ritual to borrow from many different sources. But the primary source from which it borrowed is the stonemason guilds of the Middle Ages, because that's from whence it came. So that's what it took from the most. The six-pointed star in Freemasonry, Dad, I think they're referring to Eastern Star. Normally, that's what they're referring to. Vi, Victi, you seem to be anti-Semitic, which does not seem cool to me. I'm not gonna block you, but I'm not a fan of anti-Semitism. The way you seem to be throwing the term Jew around in an insulting manner. Um, I do repeat the same stuff because I get the same questions. About an hour in is when I start talking differently or start talking about specific subjects. Today it's going to be International Day for Persons with Disability, and how I think we in Freemasonry can make sure our buildings are properly accessible. Well, don't piss on anybody. This is not me, Masons or otherwise. Piss away from people. Infamous is another. Well, I'm a Mason apologist. I love Freemasonry. Wow, Vi Victe, you've got some anger in you. I think you might need to calm down a little bit. Um, I may, but I try not to nonlinear progress because I think banning. I don't know if it helps, but my whole point is I started this stream to talk about Freemasonry and why I love it. Part of that means I have to be willing to accept Vi Victe and such within the stream that they are going to be part of it, for better or worse. But it is annoying. You're not wrong about that. Michael Jones. By the way, Michael Jones, please hit like and subscribe. I am not Jewish. I'm actually a member of a lodge in Israel, though, interestingly enough. Lodge Holy Land number 50. Um, and so, yeah, an interesting note. So that will give Vivek a lot to work with, I'm sure. But yeah, well, the other thing though, linear progress is whether someone like Vivek is banned or not, they're still going to have their opinions, right? And one of the things, unfortunately, that exists within the world is a lot of negative views of Freemasonry. Maybe if they're still here, I can at least demonstrate to them that I'm a good person, if nothing else. And if they think I'm a good person, maybe they'll reconsider their views on Freemasonry. And maybe not. And if they don't, then so be it. No, Freemasonry is not a secret society, infamous flex. Freemasonry is, it's, some people use the term society with secrets. I'm not a big fan of that term either. It does not derive from the 6-star Vivek. You were wrong about that. It actually derives from stone masonry. It predates Freemasonry by the square and compass symbol, right? It predates Freemasonry by, like, speculative masonry by a couple centuries, to be honest. There is also not child marriage in masonry. I think Vivek, you have been looking at stuff online that is incorrect. There's a lot of misinformation, lies, as well as just people stirring shit on the internet. But sadly, you have been taken in by some hucksters online, Vivek. And no, they do not, because I've met and been part of many. Well, I know many higher ups, quote unquote, higher ups. And I've been to several higher up degrees and events. So, hello, Crystal Lynn. I mean, my kind of, the way I always describe it is, I've been a Freemason since 2007. So just about 20 years, which is crazy to think it's been that long. In that time, I've been to over 1,000 meetings, traveled around the world, right? I've been to the Philippines, I've been to South America, all throughout America, North America, Mexico, Brazil. I'm going to Colombia. I've been to over 1,000 Masonic events around the world. If there were anything concerning within Freemasonry, like illegal or wrong or immoral, I would have seen it based on the number of times I've attended different events, right? Especially because sometimes I'll just show up. It's one thing if every time I attended an event, I had to register in advance and tell them I was coming and tell them my degree, then I could understand the argument of they're hiding things from me. However, the fact that I've never seen anything that would indicate anything immoral or illegal, and I've been to so many events with the higher ups, involving higher ups, at Scottish Rite, 33rd degree held events, things like that, and I'm not seeing anything, I feel like that should indicate something as to a level of trust. You don't have to trust me. It's a free country. You can believe what you want, but I can tell you my experiences and you can make your own decisions from there. Yes, SMDH Rondo. Sometimes I agree. However, I started this stream to talk about Freemasonry, and part of that means I have to talk to, I would describe as somewhat annoying people. Well, who is the true God? This is not me, because I think you're referring to Morals and Dogma and Albert Pike, and that section. But there is no true God within Freemasonry. Freemasonry is not a religion. We do not worship a deity. It's a civic group, a civic organization. It's kind of like saying the true god of the local knitting club. Crystal Lynn, the Masonic building in Calgary and Heritage is not accessible to individuals. That's unfortunate, Crystal Lynn. Um, I don't want to say that um, um, I don't want to say that, I understand it's hard. If it's a heritage building, especially, it can be incredibly hard to do work on it because sometimes there are government regulations about heritage, what you can and can't do, and codes about ramps. Having said that, I would hope that maybe Calgary will reconsider and find some money, find some permits in order to um, make their building accessible. Rayon Vank, I was invited to a fancy year-end dinner. Were you invited to a Masonic dinner, Rayon? And by the way, please hit like and subscribe. I would truly, truly appreciate it. You can quote whomever you want, Vi, so long as there's no, racist or anti-Semitic or, swears in it. So long as you're keeping things kind. Um, yes, it was at my old university lodge. Masonic lodge or fraternal lodge? Um, Again, whoever says it, because, no anti-Semitic or racist language or swears or threats or anything like that. Um, yes, it was at my old. Okay, very cool though. Thank you for being here, Rion Van Wyck. Thank you for joining. I hope you'll hit the like and subscribe button. I was just at the UG. Well, we'll be talking about that in an hour, Harry, Dad. The first hour, I just talk about whatever. I don't have any specific topics. The second hour is when I switch over to whatever specific topic of the day. I was just at the Grand Lodge of England, UGLE. Very cool building. I grabbed some coffee at the. Thank you, Rian. I grabbed some coffee at the Goose and Gridiron, which was awesome. Actually, a cappuccino, in fact. It's very good. You can follow me on social media. Follow me on Instagram to learn more about my trips. Well, I mean, if, for example, they use a word like the N word, the R word, the K word, whether you're quoting or not, can't use it in the stream. Part of it is because YouTube will block it, but also it's just a vulgar word, so you don't get to quote it. My stream, my rules. So, Rianne, do you have any questions, thoughts on Freemasonry? Positive, negative, or neutral? I'd love to hear them. Um, and it's wonderful to have you join. It's more, I sense a tone with you. Dream Seeker, a tone through the keyboard. I am doing well. Um, how are you doing, Dream Seeker? Thank you for being here. By the way, don't forget, Dream Seeker, we still have our coffee club going on. You're welcome to join. Grab some coffee um, at the Masonic Temple. So I can't trust Masons, so change my mind. Well, I'm not trying to change your mind, um, Vi, because you have the right to trust or not trust whomever you so choose. And it's not my place to tell you who you should or shouldn't trust. I can only tell you my experience, why I love Freemasonry, and why I believe you're incorrect. Beyond that, though, you are welcome to believe whatever you want. You're welcome to trust or not trust whomever you so choose. Um, I would just say it's very dangerous to not keep an open mind when you're speaking to someone, especially if they have experience with Freemasonry and not just experience, but 20 years worth of experiences. I had a friend, a lawyer. Okay, cool. I have my apron as well. Not here. I keep it at the Masonic Temple. Um, And yes, you can't read the little black book, but that is our ritual or ceremonial book. Um, 1009. I would love to learn more, to be honest. Well, I'm happy to. But see, Vi, I wouldn't call it secret. I call it private. And you're probably saying, what's the difference, or that's a distinction without a difference. But actually, I think it's very important. And Vi, I usually use this example, right? So, would you, for example, it can be ciphered. Would you, for example, Vi, give me your bank account information or your social insurance number or your address? Which, by the way, you shouldn't. But if I asked, would you put that stuff in the chat? Um, Rian, you're very close. I understand the need to keep sacred things sacred. You're very close to that idea. And I'll tell you how I would change what you're saying slightly in just 1 second. Yes, as Dream Seeker says, a promised family recipe. So let's imagine, Vi, that you have a family recipe that was passed down from your grandparents to your parents to you. You're going to pass it on to your kids, right? You're not going to put that family recipe online and share it for the world to see. Not because there's anything nefarious or improper about the recipe, rather, because maintaining the privacy of that family recipe maintains the bonds of family between yourself, future, past, and current generations. Within Freemasonry, it's the same thing. We have rings, we have jewels. Those things matter. Those things are special. Those things, they mean something, but that's not ultimately what we pass down. What we pass down to our brothers ultimately is our modes of recognition and our private ceremonies. If we start to share them with everybody, it affects the relationship I have with my brother. It makes it less special because more people are sharing in that now. And that's why I can speak for myself, why I personally choose to maintain the privacy of our ceremonies. There's things I will talk about, things I won't talk about. Um, every Mason kind of decides for himself to a certain extent, but I think maintaining the privacy of these ceremonies maintains the bonds of brotherhood between past and future generations, right? What I always say is there are many valuable reasons to keep things private. Thank you, 1009. Sometimes you keep things private because you because it's financial reasons. Sometimes it's for safety or security reasons. Within Freemasonry, for me, it's to maintain the bonds of brotherhood between past and future generations. And Dream Seeker, keeping your word is important as well. Um, I've never been afraid of being persecuted. I'm more than happy to tell anybody who asks. I'm a Freemason. I talk about it online, 5 days a week, 10 times, 10 times a week, twice a day, 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. Never been afraid of persecution. Even when I went to places where Freemasonry was illegal, like the United Arab Emirates, I still brought my dues card with me, and I still, had my Masonic patches on my wheelchair. Never got any gruff or never faced any issues. So I'm not afraid of being persecuted. Now, it's interesting, during World War II in Nazi Germany, there was the risk of persecution because Hitler banned Freemasonry. Um, the communists banned it as well in Russia. However, if you are on the opposite side of Hitler, I'm very happy about that because I'm very happy to be on the opposite side of Hitler. I am in a wheelchair. I was born with no legs, so not a veteran. I was born with no legs. Um, They just deal with me because I'm so handsome. My best friends are Masons and Knights of Columbus. Well, I mean, Masons and Knights of Columbus should be very loyal. I love the Knights of Columbus. They're a great group, great organization. I think I think society benefits from the more civic groups that exist. I think that's also true of lodges, of Freemasonry, right? If civic society grows, lodges grow as well. Um, I've I've opened lodges for people to see. Um, I've done many open houses. I love doing open houses. We need to do more of them, honestly. Uh, he exposed your secrets. The secrets have been exposed so many times. I don't even worry about it anymore. At this point, maintaining the secrets is about me and my decision. If I was worried about exposing it to others, the that horse has left the cart. The problem is, if you go online, you will find all the secrets of Freemasonry that are true, and you'll also find all the secrets of Freemasonry that are false. And you're not going to know which is which. So, especially if you're struggling in life or maybe have emotional issues or stresses and you're looking for somebody to blame, you can find someone to blame online. In some cases, it's the Freemasons. In some cases, it's the Jews. In some cases, it's both. In some cases, it's black people. You know, it's about finding someone to blame for maybe how you're feeling on the inside. Spirit, welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. I'm actually going to be in South America very, very soon. I can't wait. I'm going to be in Bogota, Colombia, though. So, not in your South America, but still in South America, checking out the Museum of Freemasonry of South America. I mean, you're always welcome, 1009. You should always ask about it. If they're not, um, if they are not, what's the word I'm looking for? If they are not wanting to talk about it or they're too busy, they'll just tell you we're too busy to talk about it. However, you should always ask. You should never be afraid to ask. Uh, New York, October 1927. Masonry is based on Judaism. Eliminate the teaching of Judaism from the Masonic ritual. I mean, I can tell you a lot, or white people as well. Sure, any group, right? Any group. Um, um, right? Or blaming rich or blaming poor or blaming white people, black people. It's just looking for someone to blame for how you're feeling on the inside. Um, I mean, a lot would be left. Uh, the entirety of the shrine would be left. Most of York Rite would be left. A fair bit of certainly the first degree would be left. The Egyptian rooms in Masonic lodges would be left. The Masonic symbol, the square and compasses with the G, would be left. Um, I, I can think of, my gosh, if you removed kind of Judaic influences from Freemasonry, there would be a ton of Freemasonry left. So that is some nonsense, I'm sorry to say. Bobby Heenan, is that in reference to Bobby Heenan, the professional wrestling manager, the greatest professional wrestling manager of all time, by the way? Um, are there any Black Masons? I mean, there are. Freemasonry welcomes men of all different faiths and beliefs. I've sat in Masonic Lodge with Black Freemasons, Asian, European, South American, Indigenous, Hindu, Sikh, different races, different religions, different ethnicities, different languages. That's the thing I love about it. Now, when referring to Prince Hall, so unfortunately, Freemasonry is like everything else. It's made up of people. People have good and bad qualities to them. They can be racist. And in 1777, a Mason, a gentleman by the name of Prince Hall, applied to join a Masonic lodge and was denied entry because he was black. Um, so he ended up going through the Grand Lodge of Ireland and then the Grand Lodge of England, and ended up forming Prince Hall Freemasonry. And that was designed at the time exclusively for black men who wanted to join, but were being denied admittance to Masonry due to the racism of the time. Um, it's grown since then. It's now around the world. It now welcomes men of, just like Freemasons welcome men of all different races. Prince Hall Freemasonry, which is Freemasonry, welcomes men of all races as well. But it still exists, and it's still a very valuable and important part of our lodges. Were the Hirams Jewish? Actually, I don't know. I mean, Hiram Biff, in my opinion, Hiram Biff is not a real person. He's a metaphor. He would have likely come from Lebanon, um, or maybe Israel. So he may have been like Hiram King of Tyre, who I believe Hiram King of Tyre was a real figure. Um, um, like I think he existed. He was Lebanese, from Lebanon, from a certain region in Lebanon that had the cedars, right? Because one thing he provided to the building was oak as well as stone and other items. The others, I'm not sure. King Solomon would have been Jewish, right? Yes, he gave me the name in front of Madison Square Garden in 1993. Hey, the real Bobby the Brain Heenan was amazing. Absolutely one of maybe the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. Well, he actually was a professional wrestler, but he was also, probably in my opinion, the greatest manager of all time. Um, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Well, Shrine is not ethnic. I know Shriners who are all different ethnicities. Shrine is kind of, when it was developed, I can't remember the year, they stole a lot of their rituals and symbolisms from the East, particularly Morocco, actually. The hat with the red, it's actually based on a hat from Morocco, and the red is based on red berries found in Morocco. Um, it's real to me. Yes, it's real to me. Well, I wouldn't call that a Freemason fraternity. It's a fraternity, but not every fraternity is Freemasonry, right? Um, so not all Black Masons are Prince Hall, but many aren't. Prince Hall is a wonderful organization. Ivermectin asked if a Satanist can join, and then he said, "Be honest now." I'm always honest, or I try to be honest. Um, so I don't know if a Satanist could join or not. To be a Freemason, you have to believe in a supreme being. The one, um, the one um, exposure I had to a Satanist was he called and said he was interested in joining Freemasonry. Um, and then I asked him, for what reason, why? He said, well, he's a Satanist, and he believes that Freemasonry is part of Satanism, or he wanted to be a Satan. He was a Satanist. He wanted to continue practicing. He wanted to join Freemasonry. So I met with him. We had a coffee. I talked to him. I explained to him what Freemasonry is, how it works, our philosophies. And he decided he was not going to join because he said, based on what I explained to him, Freemasonry and Satanism were incompatible with each other. So that is the one exposure I've had with it. I've never met a satanic Freemason. To my knowledge, when it comes to this idea of being able to believe in a supreme being, um, a Satanist couldn't join because based on my knowledge of their beliefs, Satanists believe that they themselves, the individual, is the supreme being, which would not be congruent with what supreme being is defined as to Freemasonry. Having said that, I'm not going to say it's impossible. There's probably, this is a rough estimate, 10 million Masons worldwide. Could one of them be a Satanist? I'm not going to say it's impossible. I've just never seen it, never met with them in lodge. And the one time I spoke to a Satanist about Freemasonry, he decided not to join. So you take it for whatever it's worth. Dan, I am well. So ivermectin is this idea of the supreme being. He said that to a Satanist, the supreme being is the individual himself. And I explained that for us, supreme being has to mean something beyond the individual, right? It doesn't have to mean a particular religious faith. You don't have to be a Christian, Jewish, Muslim. You don't have to have a particular faith per se. But if you believe that the supreme being is yourself exclusively, then it's not really applicable for you. I am not into numerology or gematria. I know of them, but I don't know enough about them. Thank you, Ali, the AI, for liking the stream. I hope you'll also subscribe. One day, maybe we'll get some artificial intelligence joining Freemasonry. Who knows? It wouldn't shock me. Anything's possible. Nice, Mr. Keep. So you're leaving tonight for Peru? What time do you take off? What time is your flight? Make sure you got all your vaccinations. Make sure you got your passport, etc., etc. Make sure it doesn't expire within 6 months. Oh, so you're taking the red-eye flight. I'd like taking red-eye flights because, you arrive the next morning, you've got the entire day. It adds like an extra day to your trip. What are you most looking forward to checking out while you're in Peru? Anything in particular? Machu Picchu? That's in Peru, right? And if I'm wrong, I'm very sorry. Superman could probably join. I don't see why not. I've actually asked that question on stream. If an alien were to apply to join Freemasonry, would you let him? In Superman's case, it's super easy because even though he's not a human, he clearly has all the physical characteristics and could be considered a male. I believe he believes in a supreme being. So I don't see why not. The issue becomes if you're, an alien who doesn't look like a man, who, is an amorphous blob, let's say, and they want to join. How do you figure that out? I would say yes, though. I mean, mostly because I wouldn't want to piss the alien off. I'd be very, very worried about angering the alien and then getting destroyed by a ray gun. Nice. So it sounds like you go there regularly. Is Peru like your spot to visit? Is Peru your spot to travel? Is that like your favorite spot to be? I'm sure it's beautiful. Oh, well, then that would explain that. Wonderful people, wonderful country. How long of a flight is it to get from here to Peru? Or from, how long of a flight do you have? Having Peruvian family is very, very cool. I'm sure it's really fun to visit. Okay, and you do the direct thing, no stopovers? One thing I'm always suggesting within Freemasonry, within my Masonic brothers, is if you have to fly somewhere and you're able, try to get a layover somewhere. Try to get a longer layover than maybe you would normally, and use that layover to check out Masonic lodges in the area. Sometimes Masonic lodges are relatively close to the airport. That's the case in Orlando. I've had a few stopovers in Orlando. I once had an 8-hour stopover, once had a 12-hour stopover in Orlando. Took advantage of it, went to visit some Masonic brothers, ended up going to a barbecue at a Prince Hall Lodge. Delicious food. They were doing a playoff football barbecue celebration thing. So, yeah. Okay, so they speak Spanish in Peru? I thought they did. That was my assumption. Most places in South America, it's Peruvian, except for Brazil, which is Portuguese. Cool, Infamous Rex. Your wife is Black, Spanish, and Asian. What matters most is that you love them, right? And that you have a family. So wonderful for everybody. Happy to hear. We have so many happily married people in the stream. Nigerian Nightmare with the jokes. Um, RIP. I don't know who that is. Who is that spirit? A minority speaks. So I'm assuming I'm going to pronounce this horribly. Kikua? I'm assuming Kikua is an indigenous language from like the natives to Peru. Um, well, Cajun people are crazy, but they're also awesome. I love Cajun people. That's interesting. I'd love to see, a lot of places around the world are really working hard at trying to um, revive or protect or preserve indigenous languages. I'm a big fan of that. Here in Windsor, I've tried every now and then to communicate or include phrases in the original in indigenous languages here, Ojibwe, for example, within, let's say, lodge summonses or social media. I truly think that's important. I think we as Freemasons could maybe play a small role in preserving indigenous languages around the world that are at risk of being lost. Quechua. Okay, so is it a hard CH like school, or is it a soft CH like choo choo? Thank you, 1009. I'll be on for a little while, so it'll be great to have you join when you can. Can-Am Friendship Center is great. I've used them in the past, talked to them in the past. Wonderful group. Okay, so it's Quechua. But I mean, I've talked about this before. Maybe we in Freemasonry, especially if we have members who are, indigenous speakers, speak an indigenous language, um, worth seeing what we can preserve or protect. Yes, Mr. Keeps is a smart man. I consider myself a bit of a professional traveler. It's something I'm really proud to do. Carry on is absolutely the exclusive way to go, in my opinion. Don't check bags. It's a risk. They could get lost, human error. They're more likely to get damaged. If you're a Mason, heaven forbid you put in your carry-on any Masonic items that can't be replaced. Good luck getting them back. So, and you will eventually. Don't get me wrong. I've had bags, when I used to check my bags, be lost. The airlines were always wonderful about returning them to me. Having said that, um, carry-on is the way to go. It also is cheaper. It's so expensive to check bags nowadays. I've given this advice before, but I might as well give it again. If you are a Freemason and you're traveling and you happen, I don't know where I put it now. Okay, I've lost it. Well, if I find it, if you are a Freemason and you happen to have one of those apron cases, not the like solid briefcase style, but the fabric style that opens and closes to carry your Masonic apron in, so long as you don't overfill it, it's the perfect size to act as a personal item. Because normally when you're traveling, the way it works is you're allowed one personal item. Most people think of it as a purse or like as a backpack, so long as it's not overfilled. And then if it's too big, it's no longer a personal item, it's a carry-on item, and it costs you money to bring on the plane. Your apron case is the perfect size to be a personal item. So if you can fit just a couple pieces of clothing in there, a couple Masonic items, maybe a few, necessities, you end up not needing to pay for check bag fees. So, oh, Corbin I might as well put this on here. I don't know if you guys can see that. He's a cranky dude, cranky whoever he is. Maybe he'll say more, but YouTube's not gonna let you be putting those things in the stream. I use the same luggage brand model. Also, there you go. So you're probably even more of a pro than me. What brand? Give a shout out. What's the brand of luggage that you use? Maybe they'll sponsor this stream. By the way, it's been a pretty incredible, busy but fun week. Not my busiest Masonic week by any means, but it has been a busy week. Um, I had a Masonic meeting on Monday, a Masonic meeting on Tuesday, two Masonic meetings on Wednesday, a Masonic meeting on Thursday, and a Masonic meeting on tonight, and then a Masonic meeting on Saturday. Prime Rays, welcome back. Yes, Gucci. I love Gucci. If Gucci's watching this, I love them. I think they're an incredible brand. I look forward to getting their sponsorship. Oh, so you're going to get 25 centimeters of snow. You must be beyond excited to be getting out of there. I will keep my fingers crossed for you. I'll knock on wood for you that any snow and weather does not affect your travel. I've been stuck at some airports, not able to travel. It's been a pain in the butt, so fingers crossed for you. Hello, Mikhail Gorba Gorb. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. Oh, so going to 20, I thought for some reason when I saw that 25, I was like 25 snow, that would be insane. Okay, in Lima, that makes more sense. Well, still, you'll be okay. I'm sure it'll be worth it. I'm sure it'll be a really fun trip. I do, Kid Jeezy, but you can hit the like and subscribe button. Um, Kid Jeezy, that would be much appreciated. Well, to become a 33rd, it's not about the rituals, right? To become a 33rd, you have to be invited. I'm not a 33rd degree myself. I've never taken part in any 33rd, the ritual to become a 33rd. I've been to Masonic events where they talk about the 33rd degree and they, explain kind of what it is for Masons. What I would say is for that, you got to join, then join Scottish Rite, then get invited. It usually takes years and years. Um, and there's an initiation ceremony, which an obligation, but that's true for every degree. Um, it's You're in Antarctica? That is incredible. Can you send me pictures? I'd love to see some pictures of Antarctica. I don't think I've ever seen any like I've seen pictures of Antarctica, I'm sure in books and stuff, but I'd love to see a picture of somebody actually there. Send it to me through Instagram. That would be so cool. I mean, you're a member actually. I remember you. I remember the name. When I see it, I think of Gorbachev. I think of uh, Russia. So that's how I kind of remember you. But it is wonderful to have you here once again. I hope that you're doing well. Today, I was actually going to talk about International Day of Persons with Disabilities. That technically was on December 3rd, so I'm a couple days late. However, I still thought, you know what, it's worth discussing how we in Freemasonry can be inclusive and accessible to all abilities, both in a physical sense, building sense, and also maybe even in somewhat of an emotional sense. And I'll talk to you about what I mean by that shortly. I did not. I've never seen anything that would indicate anybody is sacrificing anything. I always say the one thing we sacrifice in Freemasonry is our time, which can be quite extensive, believe me. Well, so within Freemasonry, and this goes all the way back to the Anderson Constitutions and even the Regius poem and the Regius manuscript, right? In both examples, one of the things that is mentioned and instructed, and actually it's re-instructed in your first degree, is, yes, if a brother asks you to keep a secret, you are to maintain a secret. However, that is not to be done in the case of felonies or immoral behaviors. So if, for example, you see a brother kill somebody, you're not keeping that private. You are telling the authorities. And if the brother asks you to keep that private, you should not. Um, right? So right off the bat, we are taught in Freemasonry that any acts that are contrary to the laws of a country, to, you know, morality, are to be reported to the appropriate authorities. Never read Manly P. Hall's work. I should, though, at some point. Prime race. My Instagram is at square underscore and underscore compass underscore promotions. Um, please take a moment to find me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram, and I'd love to see a pic. Masons are not above the law. That's not how it works. Masons are subject to the laws just like everybody else. And in fact, we should be subject to the laws just like everybody else. Um, well, it's the opposite now, right? Because we're taught in Freemasonry to abide by the laws of the country and not to turn anyone in. Um, right? In ancient times, when you're talking about our stonemason brothers, so 500 years ago, the reason that it was so important that any laws that are being broken be reported immediately was actually for business reasons. Freemasons or stonemasons were earning money through stonework, right? Through building things. If they're out there committing crimes and not getting caught, but people kind of know about it, sooner or later, it brings the craft into disrepute. Nobody's going to hire them to do work, and they're going to starve. So it's very important to obey the laws of the countries in which you live and to tell others to obey the laws of the countries in which they lived and worked so they could keep getting work in that country, in that location. Within Freemasonry, the reason that, is obvious, aside from the fact it's the right thing to do, if we're out there committing crimes and, not telling anybody or harming people, it brings the whole craft into disrepute. It has the benefit of both being the moral thing to do and the effective thing to do. Um, it's amazing how often the moral thing and the effective thing are one and the same, um, in my opinion. So maybe there's a lesson in that somewhere. My company says to abide by all laws. Well, I mean, if it's illegal to do business in Mexico, that's one thing. And I mean, look, every probably country business has some, pick your term, spillage is sometimes a term that's used. Greasing palms. I think it's best to avoid that stuff, but I'm not going to pretend like it never happens in business or governments or a combination of the both. Well, it depends where you're at, roll the losing dice. So, and unfortunately, a lot of times we kind of exist in gray zones as humans. If you're in Canada, an emulation ritual, the checkerboard usually represents, or usually thinking of what's called a mosaic pavement, represents the uncertainty of life, how things can be going great one day, terrible the next, and how we should try to remain calm and even throughout. In American ritual, York Rite, very often, or Preston Webb, very often it represents duality between good and evil. Well, Adam Levi's, that's pretty harsh. I would never call any state a crap state. I don't care what it is. Could even be North Korea. I wouldn't call it a crap state. I have different political disagreements with different states, but that's the politics. That's not the people. The people of every state, I think, deserve respect. We call it mosaic pavement, but Manitoba and Ontario may have different words for it, different rituals. Your local Spurs. I've been doing well. How have you been doing? Thank you for being back here once again. Yeah, I mean, and that's something that does pop up fairly frequently within Freemasonry. This idea of yin and yang, duality, good and bad. not even good and bad per se, but just sometimes you're on top of the world, you're up, you're, living life. Sometimes you're at the bottom of the wheel, right? The wheel keeps on spinning. You have a responsibility as it spins to find a way to demonstrate your what's the best word? Equanimity in those challenging times. Hello, Courtney. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. You can say whatever you want, Adam Levies. I'm just giving you my opinion, which is I don't think it's cool to call any state a quote unquote crap state. I'd rather not. Because I think it's too unkind to the people. I don't think you should ever judge the people in a country for what you think of the government. I've heard the word tessellation before, but I can't think of what it means now. A pattern made of repeating geometric shapes that covers a flat surface. So, yeah, you could argue that it's a tessellation. Interpolate. You're asking me to look up a lot of words here. The process of estimating unknown values that fall between known data points. That's interesting. I don't know necessarily what that means with Freemasonry. It is just two. You're right, Gorba Gorb. I can make you a mod. I'm not going to do that today because I think things are going well so far. But I mean, definitely look at making you a mod in future. We got hearts. That's usually dream seeker. Well, I know what extrapolation means, right? Extrapolation means continuing a pattern beyond beyond the point at which the data set ends. So if I tell you there's a pattern and it goes, you get 2 apples and 4 apples and 8 apples and 16 apples, you can extrapolate that the next batch of apples you get will be 32. I use all sorts of, let me see. I think Reg Stoneman, I'm gonna have to block you. Normally I do not block people or put people in timeouts, but in your case, they're gonna have to. Yes, what can you do? Well, extrapolate is when you interpret first and then you extrapolate, right? You interpret a data set, and based on the information you have, you extrapolate to what it will be. By the way, I still want to talk about International Persons with Disabilities Day. Right now, interesting, we have 30 votes. Is your Masonic building accessible for all community members with physical disabilities? And you could argue I should have put other disabilities as well. We'll talk about that. 10, 10, and 10. 10 yes, 10 no, 10 somewhat. So that's very, very interesting. You can be overwhelmed, you can be underwhelmed, but can you just be whelmed? I don't think so. I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that's how language works, but you'd think there would be a word. Maybe there is a word for whelmed. I just don't know it. Because to be whelmed would just be your normal state. It'd just be your average state of interest in something, right? Let's give it another couple minutes, then I'll start talking about the International Day of Persons with a Disability. which was December 3rd, 2025. It is not. I mean, Skull and Bones, to my knowledge, it's a fraternity out of like Yale College. I'm sure there's many people who joined Skull and Bones first and then went on to join Freemasonry, but they're not, one is not a faction of the other. 33 degrees in Freemasonry. Yes, Rainy Go. Do you Freemasons? I mean, we're taught in Freemasonry, or one of the philosophies of Freemasonry is that charity is incredibly important. And certainly we're encouraged to be charitable and help out our brothers, but we're also taught that charity is important to the world at large and to help our neighbors and communities. I mean, yeah, like, well, I mean, it really depends on how active the Freemason is. Like, so for example, I know Freemasons who literally, there's one Freemason I've seen every day this week, and I'm going to see him again tonight and again tomorrow. If he needs help, he's more likely to come to me or other Masons because he sees us every day, right? And so it's natural that people around him will want to help him out. If you're a Mason and you never show up to lodge and no one knows you, you may have neighbors you'll ask, right? But certainly Freemasonry, it puts you in a privileged position to potentially help more people because you're now part of a lodge, you know more people, which means you can help more people. There's more people who can ask you for help. Also, you know, the we have a responsibility within Freemasonry, I think, to increase our ability to help others as best as we can. So, for example, that's one of the reasons why I always mention that I think every Freemason should know the emergency line for suicide awareness, which is 988. If anybody's thinking about hurting themselves, that's the number to call. I think every Freemason should know that number. So if a brother or anybody in the world is experiencing those thoughts, they have somewhere to call. You know, I think we in Freemasons should have lists of who has spare rooms. So if a brother loses his house, maybe there's a fire, whatever, he can move into a new place. I think we should all know first aid. So if a brother gets ill or injured or has a heart attack, we can at least try to help. We should know the process to request benevolence. My Instagram is not popping up. Well, privileged to help others, right? We know more people because we're Masons, so that puts us in a privileged position as it relates to our Masonic brothers. Just try searching this in Instagram. See if that pops up that way. You know, in the same way, I'm in a privileged position as it relates to my neighbors because I see them more often, I talk to them more often, so if I'm in a privileged position to know if they might need help more so than others. Kevin, I don't know what that means. I'm not left-handed. I don't know if that's some type of Masonic reference. I'm not understanding. I am right-handed. If that is a Masonic reference, I've never heard of it. In the pale of the moonlight, losing dice to reference Batman. Well, now we're getting into a whole other topic, a whole other conversation. What I will say is Freemasonry actually has a really cool and really interesting history with First Nations and Indigenous groups. In many instances, Masonic lodges were some of the first places that Indigenous individuals could actually join civic organizations. They're very often precluded from other groups, but Freemasons very often welcome them into their lodges. Sorry, Kevin, I don't know what you're talking about. Joshua, what is Masonic? Welcome, Joshua. Please hit like and subscribe. When I'm speaking of Masonic, I'm speaking of things that refer to or are connected to Freemasonry. Freemasonry is a civic and fraternal organization that has existed since, uh, well, depending on the date you pick, we'll go with 1717. Um, Kevin. Well, Kevin, that won't be an issue for Freemasons. I've known many Catholic Freemasons throughout the years. Wonderful part of the craft, great people. If you personally, um, if you're concerned that it would bring you into conflict with your faith, then by all means, your faith should come first. And I completely understand you maybe holding off. But if you're concerned that Freemasons won't accept you if you're Catholic, that is not the case. Freemasons have, I know many Catholic men who are Freemasons. Well, so Raven, in that case, Freemasons should not be committing manipulative practices. I'm not saying Freemasons are perfect, but I've never heard of Freemasons taking anyone's land. Nor do we um, we do not wear a Baphomet sigil. Um, so I'm not sure. I think your Mason friend might be wrong, Kevin. Like, I don't know what your Mason friend is referring to. I've known Catholics who are 33rd degrees. So maybe he's talking about York, right? There can be some stuff there. But even that, I don't think that's the case. I think your Mason friend may be incorrect. Um, I did just come back from Scotland. Um, I loved being in Scotland. It was wonderful. Beautiful place, Edinburgh. Very beautiful place. So yes, December 3rd, 2025 was International Day of Disabled Person. The theme was fostering disability inclusive societies for advancing social progress. He was not rich. Um, we have no high wizards. That's not a rank in Freemasonry. Um, so across all regions, and Freemasonry is also across all regions, persons with disabilities and their households face challenges and barriers in the attainment of social development objectives. They are more likely to live in poverty. They can face discrimination. Social protection systems are uneven in coverage and can be inadequate when you consider extra disability costs. Many persons with disabilities, goodbye, Dad. I love you. Thank you for being here. Many related, I do know what the G stands for, Kevin, but I'm not going to tell you. You got to join. Many persons with disabilities experience within care and support system are marked for denial. I've talked many times in the past about the benefits for as connected as they want to be, Mikhail. Sometimes they can be very connected. Sometimes they can kind of do their own thing. There is no rule or requirement, but the healthier the lodge is, the more connected it'll be with other lodges, right? I've talked about this a lot, how Freemasonry helps people within society. It helps people be healthier by providing a cure to loneliness, by providing a cure to isolation. It helps fight against all sorts of different mental and physical health issues. Freemasonry provides a social safety net for individuals, right? We said above, people with disabilities are more likely to live in poverty. I've known at least 2 individuals who would have been homeless were it not for Freemasonry stepping in and providing assistance with rent and providing assistance with the mortgage. Not only did it help them, but it helped their family. The other thing to keep in mind when we're talking about disabilities, it's important to remember that within disability, disability is one type of issue that can actually derive over time. You may have spent most of your life being quote unquote able-bodied, only to then suffer a stroke, suffer an accident, suffer an injury, a car accident, whatever it might be, and end up disabled. You could lose a limb, you could lose mobility, you could become mobility impaired, you could become blind, you can lose your hearing over time, right? Which can be a type of disability as well. Um, you need to be really careful with Albert Pike, Kevin. Um, I'm not saying you don't read him. I'm saying you need to take what he says with a huge grain of salt. Ultimately, what he was doing is describing his Masonic philosophy, not Freemasonry per se. Um, you know, an estimated 1.3 billion people experience a significant disability. As the population gets older, that number goes up. And so as the population of Freemasons get older, um, that number goes up. Some persons with disabilities die up to 20 years earlier than those with disabilities. Again, I've talked about how in Freemasonry, there's actually evidence that our life expectancy increases if you're a Freemason, right? Persons with disabilities have twice the risk of developing conditions such as depression, asthma, diabetes, stroke, obesity, and poor health. So again, within Freemasonry, I've talked about how Freemasonry protects people's health. That would include people with disabilities if they can access our services, if they can access membership, right? Health inequalities arise from unfair conditions faced by persons with disabilities, including stigma, discrimination, poverty, and barriers in the healthcare system. Well, that is actually a myth, Kevin. That's not what he said. That was a hoax about Albert Pike. Um, I found people have been very well with my work and contributing to my, ability to work. But I also am very lucky to have been born in Canada and to have been born when I was born. When I get these options, when I get these, again, that's a Masonic philosophy. That's not necessarily what they represent. He did. He was a Luciferian, but he's the exception. Um, which, by the way, it's not the same as um, Satanism. A lot of people get those two things mixed up. Uh, Again, just because it says it in his book, take it with a huge grain of salt. So, what we know is that if you have a disability, and I'm speaking globally, I'm speaking worldwide, you are, first of all, there's a high number of people who are experiencing disability right now, and that number is going to go up as the population ages. As people get older, they're going to develop disabilities. They're going to develop impairments. The most common one, trouble with mobility, trouble walking, trouble taking the stairs. They may need to use a walker. They are also at twice the risk of developing conditions related to isolation, depression, as well as conditions like asthma, diabetes, stroke, obesity, poor oral health. They may even die up to 20 years earlier than those without disabilities. They're more likely, again, to experience poverty. They're more likely to potentially experience isolation. And they may have trouble accessing coverage systems like insurance or government benefits that they may need. Um, yeah, it sucks that they turned it off. I'm very sorry about that. And we do not worship the devil in any degrees. So we know that within Freemasonry, we have several disabled, we have many disabled members. We also know that many of our currently able-bodied members are going to be developing disabilities over time as they get older. It may just be natural causes. Suddenly they need a walker or a cane to get around. It may be medical. They may have a stroke. They may have some type of other medical condition that results in mobility impairments. They may get into an accident, right? They may develop diabetes, and as a consequence of that, they may develop, heaven forbid, have to lose a limb. We have degrees. In Freemasonry, it's degrees, right? So I think we in Freemasonry, FDR, perfect example, right? So I think we within Freemasonry have a responsibility to almost think of this as performing an audit. What are we doing to welcome individuals with disabilities, to make our buildings as inclusive as we can for those with disabilities? Because if we within Freemasonry are a social safety net, if we do provide a social safety net for the world and for the communities in which we're located and for the members in which we are located, a big part of that means making sure, well, there's a couple different reasons why. They don't necessarily face east, they face east or west, right? Because guarding the west gate, right? But I think you're probably referring to King Solomon's temple layout, Kevin. We have a responsibility to create a atmosphere, create a system in which those with disabilities are welcomed. Part of that helps the entire community, right? Because if you have a disability, you're more likely to suffer from isolation and as a consequence suffer from the health effects of isolation. If you're suffering from those health effects, sooner or later the entire community gets involved because now the health effects require doctor's visits, maybe an emergency room trip, and all of the resources that go into an emergency room visit. Whereas if you're disabled, you're at a higher risk of being isolated, you're at a higher risk of the consequences of that. Yet you find Freemasonry, they're able to welcome you, they're able to bring you into the lodge. As a consequence of that, you are less likely to need medical interventions, which is good for the individual, obviously, but it's good for the entire community as a whole. So we have a responsibility to ensure that our buildings and our work within Freemasonry is inclusive for all. So one good example, and this is one thing that almost everybody thinks of, but it's a very good thing, having a ramp, right? Not only is a ramp valuable for those Masons who are in wheelchairs, such as myself, but ramps are also valuable for those brothers who may have challenges with stairs. For example, they use a cane, they use a walker. They may even be, blind and just find it easier to use a ramp than a chair. Well, no, you can leave. There's no rule that says you have to remain a Freemason forever. There are many Masons who join, find it's not for them, and choose to demit. So ramps are one such example. Obviously, within ramps, you need to make sure that they comply with whatever the requirements are, building code compliance, having railings on either side to make sure nobody falls off, making sure they're not at such a steep angle, they're not usable. Yeah, no. Yes, it is, Matt Hands. Please like and subscribe. So there's that. Then there is when you enter the lodge itself. So first of all, the doors. Are the doors wheelchair accessible? Not just wheelchair accessible, but mobility accessible. So for example, are they automatic? Is there a button you can press to open the door automatically? In terms of security, sometimes maybe if you're the first one arriving, thank you, there's a manual key which you use to open a door. If you are, let's say, blind, let's say you're mobility impaired, you have trouble moving your arms with fine motor skills, maybe instead of using a manual key, you can switch it and use a key card, which will automatically unlock doors instead of needing a manual key, which again can be difficult for brethren who are blind, with brethren who are mobility impaired in some way and don't have those fine motor controls that you need. And then the automatic door, again, if you're using a walker, a wheelchair, whatever, you maybe just don't have the strength to open the door without automatic door openers. Obviously, yes, local lodge projects are always great, Courtney. Then, obviously, once you get in the building, if there's multiple floors and if there's stairs to get up and down, can you get a stair lift? Can you get an elevator? Maybe you need both. But even on the stairs themselves, how accessible are the stairs for those with mobility impairments? So, for somebody like myself in a wheelchair, that's one thing. But maybe you have older individuals who still like to use the stairs, but are struggling a little bit with their legs, or are more at risk of slip and fall. Can you put down some type of adhesive, like adhesive rubber or something with some grip on it, so they're less likely to slip on the stairs, especially if their stairs are made of a really smooth material like marble or wood. Some type of track, same type of thing you would put down on a shower to give yourself grip so that you're not going to slip. Grippy substance, yes, on the stairs. I think that's very important. You can also think about making sure you have a railing, making sure the railing on the stairs is of the appropriate height, making sure there's nothing attached on the railings that puts you at risk of, not gripping well. Then, your washrooms. Are your washrooms wheelchair accessible? Not just wheelchair accessible, but accessible for all abilities. So, for example, do on the signage to get in and out of the washroom, do they have Braille? Well, so there are standards, right? There are different types of standards, right? And every jurisdiction, every community, town, city, province will have its own standards. In Ontario, we have the ADA, which is the requirements for building accessibility. In the States, I think that the ADA as well, right? Which is, again, it's the bare minimum that a building must be to be considered accessible. However, I think we in Freemasonry should consider going above and beyond the minimum. Within Freemasonry, there tends not to be any specific standards about accessibility, which is unfortunate, other than compliant with all the local regulations. But I think we in Freemasonry should think more about what we are doing to ensure our buildings are accessible, and not just at the minimum standards as required by the province, the territory, the state, the city, but by everybody. I also think, we need to know what those minimum requirements are and make sure we're meeting them. Yeah, no. So we in Freemasonry, we are subject to the same codes. But I think we should go beyond those. We should know them, we should meet them, we should study them, and we should go beyond them. I think, again, not just your washrooms, do they have Braille signage, but do all of the washrooms and all of the doors and maybe the buttons in an elevator, do they all have Braille? Again, you may have a single member who's blind. You may, when you're installing Braille signage, not have any members who are blind at that time, or any visitors or guests who are blind at that time. However, that doesn't mean in future you won't get a brother who's blind who loses his sight, either as an applicant or maybe there's an accident or medical condition. I support the raccoon. It's funny, a story. I joined Freemasonry in 2007. At that time, there was a elevator in the building, but that elevator in my Masonic building was installed in the 90s. And I remember hearing stories from Masons at the time it was installed saying, we don't need an elevator. Nobody here is, disabled or can't get up and down the stairs. It's fine. And then a few years later, they ended up, a lot of those brothers who at the time were complaining about why do we need an elevator became very happy that there was an elevator because they got older, they couldn't do the stairs anymore. A couple of them got into accidents. One of them had a stroke. Um, and suddenly they're very happy that there's an elevator. In the same way, putting in Braille signage may not be of any benefit to your brothers today, but that doesn't mean it won't be of benefit to them tomorrow. Or it doesn't mean tomorrow a blind Mason is not going to come through, a blind guest is not going to visit asking to join Freemasonry. You're absolutely, or rent the building or whatever it is. You're absolutely right, Mikhail. One of the unique challenges that we face within Freemasonry is that many of our buildings are heritage. They were built at a time when people weren't thinking about disabled issues the same way we were in 2025. I would say just do what you can, right? Do what you can, comply with all relevant codes. But then, it doesn't cost a lot of money to order online some signage that includes Braille. So, maybe your elevator right now, all of the buttons don't have Braille. Probably doesn't cost a lot of money to purchase some stick-on buttons that have Braille signage on them. And, labels for the washrooms that have Braille signage as well. Can't hurt. Maybe even, the lodge room. It's about doing what you can. I'll talk about more of the things that we can do. But all of these, maybe some of these you're thinking we just can't do it because we don't have the finances. I'm just suggesting a lot of different ideas. Every Mason who may be watching this or will watch this later can think to themselves what we should and shouldn't do within their framework. Obviously, and the most important thing, within the framework of municipal and provincial codes and guidelines. Is your lodge well lit? Right? Another thing that we need to keep in mind right, despite our best efforts, our buildings need to be well lit, especially if we have brothers who, again, are older. They may not be fully blind, but they may have trouble seeing well. If our buildings are not well lit, that creates a hazard for them for tripping. That creates a hazard for them when it comes to potentially falling down, knocking into others. And it's just going to make them feel less welcome, right? Which, again, is a major issue that we need to think about all the time. And obviously, in the case of a power outage where the lights may go off, do we have emergency lighting illuminating the doors and the exits? Good evening. I was just in the UK, Blue Nose Biker. Please hit like and subscribe if you're not done so. So that is a very huge issue as well, right? Which is, there's an emergency, the lights go out, there's a power outage. Again, for everybody at this point, but especially for those who are maybe vision impaired, do we have a sufficient amount of light to be able to see where we're going? And to be able to see where we are going, and to be able to see how to evacuate successfully, especially, again, for those brothers who may be vision impaired. We don't want to create a tripping hazard. The other thing we want to think about is hearing. How well can our brethren hear? Again, brethren are getting older. So first of all, we have brethren who are just deaf in the first place, right? Who can't hear anything. But then those brethren who are becoming harder and harder of hearing as they get older. Do we have a sound system set up in our lodges, microphones, so the brethren can hear, whatever it is that they need to hear? Do we have a PA system that can make announcements if we have to? Maybe even it's worth the worshipful master and wardens, or worshipful master and secretary, wearing microphones, so at least brethren who are hard of hearing can hear them speaking. And I also think it's worth, and I've talked about this before, if you have a special meeting, a special event, something special happening, whatever it might be, For example, maybe you have a 150th anniversary celebration, you have guest speakers, you have people coming in to talk. Um, yeah, just as a statement, Cal, you can hire a sign language interpreter, right? Now that would be for a public event. Or if you can get a sign language, like if you can get a Mason who knows sign language, even better, right? You can do it that way. Um, if you can't get a Mason who knows sign language, for the public event, use sign language interpreters. For the private ceremonies, in my suggestion, this is what I would say. In Freemasonry, there are several steps that you have to take. And there's an altar. Sometimes you have to kneel at the altar. There's different movements you have to make with your legs. Obviously, I don't have any legs. I can't do that. But I can still take part in Masonic experiences and Masonic degrees because what they did for me is they had another brother walking next to me. And if there's ever, a moment I had to take a certain step or make a certain movement, the brother next to me would do it in my place, which was incredibly kind of him. Let's say there's parts within Freemasonry that are call and response, where it's verbal. You have to say something, they have to respond to you. Maybe have a brother next to the applicant who can do the call and response on his behalf. Or you could even do it in written form. You write something out, you give it to him to write back. That does create some issues. You'd have to destroy it right away. But you find a way to make it work, right? You find a way to make things work. The other thing is we in Freemasonry need to be welcoming of guide dogs, service animals, obviously for those brethren who may be vision impaired, but also brethren who maybe need guide dogs for emotional support. You need that as well. It's incredibly important. And I've actually been to several Masonic lodges where a member has brought his guide dog into the room, as they should, but also the guide dog is kind of like an unofficial member of the lodge. When the brother who has the guide dog is installed in an office, the guide dog actually gets an apron and collar to go with his master's apron and collar. Um, and so, yeah, being respectful of guide dogs is very important within Freemasonry as well. We should also be respectful and understand the rules associated with guide dogs. Like, for example, if the brother's doing something, if the guide dog is working, doing his job, don't pet the guide dog, right? That's not the right time to do it in lodge while the guide dog is doing his job. Know about the proper modes, the proper ways to deal with the guide dog. Um, again, modify ritual as necessary to accommodate different abilities and disabilities. One of the best things you can do, again, is if a brother has some type of physical impairment and there's some type of movement or token or whatever it is that's required, have a brother next to him who can do the moves, do the prescribed motions on his behalf, right? That's incredibly important. Um, have your buildings well lit. Have Braille sign language on all the relevant areas. Braille signage so our blind brethren can find it. Have emergency lights that are bright enough that, again, those who are mobile impaired are not going to be at risk of falling if they have to escape if they have to evacuate or if there's a power outage. Have full traction strips on stairs so brothers are not going to slip. Go over the procedures with a disabled brother. So, for example, if there's a fire alarm, let's say you're meeting on the top of a building, there's a fire alarm. Spend a few minutes talking to a disabled brother. Like, let's say he has a wheelchair, he can't make it downstairs. Okay, so and so's in a wheelchair. We know he needs help. We're going to evacuate and we're going to let the fire department know immediately, hey, brother so and so is upstairs. We can't use the elevator because there's a fire alarm and he's in a wheelchair and he might need assistance. So the fire department knows to go get him right away. Or, I mean, or if you can carry him down safely, you do that, right? But take a few minutes to talk to brothers about what they will need in case of an emergency. And also let your brethren know, you know, let your brethren know about different rules and procedures around accessibility. So, for example, if there's an issue with the elevator, if it gets stuck, do they know the person to call? Do they know the elevator repair company? Do they know how the alarm works? Right? I've been stuck in the elevator in Windsor a couple of times. Thank God I knew who to call. Is there a phone in the elevator that you can use to call whomever it is you need to call? Um, to assist. Um, all of this stuff is incredibly important. And it's one of those things you don't think it's important until it becomes important, and then it becomes important. Um, Within Ontario, there is also, and let me just get the information here. I want to make sure I can share it with you guys. Dun, dun, dun. Here it is. Get stuck. Yeah. So what are the procedures for that, right? I'm sure at work they talk to you about like, what are the procedures if you get stuck due to a security door? How do we make sure it works out okay, right? All that stuff is incredibly important and matters a lot. So yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. That can happen. It's same thing with anything. Like, okay, you want to be accessible. Let's say you live in a climate where you get a lot of snow and ice, and the snow and ice can get on the ramp that you install this beautiful ramp outside to make sure brethren in wheelchairs can get into the building. It snows, you get a bunch of ice. What do you do? How do you make sure that there's not too much snow, too much ice, because otherwise then it's not workable anymore, right? I can't get up a ramp if it's a complete sheet of ice. That's dangerous. Or somebody with a walker, whatever it is. Do you have brothers set aside for spreading salt? Are the brothers willing to spread salt, to shovel, to clear paths? Again, even put aside the ramp, a brother who's older parks in the back parking lot. There's ice, there's snow. Can he get to the meeting? Can he make it through the snow? Is it putting him in danger to make it through the snow and the ice? And good for that, Mikhail. I like that idea of they recognized a problem and they went to solve it, right? Hopefully you can preemptively or proactively recognize problems before they happen, which has to be the goal, right? But sometimes you don't. And in those cases, it's about fixing it after the fact. In Ontario, we have this thing called Working Together, the Code and the AODA. You can actually take this training completely for free. First Aid for You training and support. So that's how I got it. It's completely free to take. I would recommend every Mason in Ontario get the Working Together, the Code, and the AODA. I would suggest every Mason get that. It will help you learn how you can make your lodge experience and your building more accessible for those with disabilities. Yes, we just do our best. That's all we can do. What I would also recommend, though, the other thing we need to keep in mind, I've talked about physical disabilities primarily, and sensory disabilities. We also don't want to forget about mental or, intellectual, if you want to use that term. Not just disabilities per se, but types of abilities. Yes, we have that as well. That's really important. Make sure if you have automatic doors, in the case of a fire, they unlock automatically so brethren can escape. You don't want to have a situation where there's a fire and you're struggling to open doors. Um, um, for example, there may be brethren who have autism. Sometimes with autism, one of the issues can be sensory overload. They are particularly sensitive to a lot of stimuli, a lot of noises. If there's a lot of crosstalk, telling a brother, or they may suffer from anxiety, they may suffer from panic attacks. Exactly, where's my badge? They may suffer from any of those type of things. Taking a few moments, I always suggest talking to a brother about it. If you're the worshipful master and a brother um, has a panic attack of some sort, or is likely to suffer from panic attacks, tell him, you're welcome to sit close to the door if you feel like you need to leave because you feel like a panic attack is coming on. Don't announce it. Don't tell anybody. Just walk out the door. I'm not going to say anything about it. I just know. So it's fine, right? And that does definitely place a level of responsibility on the person with the disability. I think that's fair. I think it's completely fair to expect brothers to, you know, explain to a lodge, I have, I suffer from panic attacks. I'm missing my legs. These are my abilities. These are my disabilities. These are my challenges. This is how you can work with me to make sure everything is accessible for me. If there's sensory overload, maybe you need to have a room somewhere I just described, and it's very important. Um, I think it's very important to communicate back and forth. But as I just said, and it's very important, you need to have a building that's well lit. Not having it puts everybody at risk of trip, fall, but especially those with vision impairments. But maybe it's worth having one place off to the side that's a little bit darker. Maybe it's like considered the quiet place. And if you are somebody who suffers from autism, not even suffers, who is autistic, who it deals with sensory overload issues, especially if it's a busy meeting, there's a lot of people. If you need a place to go and be there for a couple minutes, set aside a space. Maybe that space is a little bit dimly lit, quiet. It's known as the quiet room. In the same way, a lot of libraries now have three different areas. They have the main library, which you should be quiet, but people can talk, quietly. You hear some chatter every now and then. You'll hear librarians talking to each other. Then you have study rooms, which are usually they're meant to be quieter, but you do still hear like clacking of keyboards, especially. Sometimes you'll hear some sound coming through earphones. And then you have quiet rooms, which I've seen a couple libraries like this, where you're not even allowed to bring a computer in the room because the sound of the keyboard and the typing is too much. It's meant to be as silent as a room can be. And yeah, Mr. Keeps, that's a great idea. Ask engineering firms and security specialists to do a building audit. I would say add a social worker in there because in my experience, engineering firms tend to do building audits based on compliance with all the relevant codes. Basically, the minimum, right? What are the requirements? What are the code requirements, whether it be fire safety, electronical safety, electronics up to date, wiring, through to disabilities. But they're exclusively looking at what are the code requirements and does it meet the code requirements at a minimum. I think within Freemasonry, we should be looking to go beyond that. Having a social worker, they tend to be able to do audits that goes above the basic, right? So for example, I don't believe it's required that there be braille signage on on labeling every door in a public building. Maybe for washrooms, I think, but not for, like, let's say, a lodge room. But a social worker will, a social worker will see that and will to suggest, hey, you should have Braille signage on these doors. And absolutely, just because someone's suffering from, whether it be anxiety, social issues, whatever it might be, that doesn't mean they're unfit to receive the degrees. What it means is we as Freemasons have a responsibility to adapt. Freemasonry, oftentimes people don't realize how important adaptability is within it, but it is incredibly important. So I hope that that just gave you some advice, right? Starting with the basics, I'll go through it one more time quickly and working outward. Outside of the building, do you have a plan in place to deal with snow? Do you have a plan in place to deal with ice? Both of those things can present challenges to anybody. Hello, Mario, good to see you. But especially to those with mobility impairments, those who use wheelchairs, those who use canes, those who use walkers. So have a plan in place to salt, to shovel. Having a ramp is great. If the ramp is covered in snow and ice, it can be dangerous. Same thing with the steps. Second, do you have a ramp? Do you have a ramp that's up to the appropriate standards and civic codes, and that has the appropriate railings to keep people from falling off? And Mikhail, it's great to have you back. After that, when you're entering a building, do you have automatic doors? Is it possible to lock and unlock the doors easily, or do you, need a manual key? That can be hard for those who are vision impaired or have manual challenges. Maintenance schedule. Check the doors regularly. Check the elevator regularly. Check the heating system. Check all of these things regularly. Did the signs fall down? How many light bulbs need to be replaced? When you're entering into a building, is it well lit for those who may have vision impaired? Or for those who may be vision impaired, is it well lit? Are there trip hazards? Are there things that a wheelchair can get stuck on? Are there wires, exposed that people can trip on? Then, as you're going through, do you have a lift? If it's a single floor building, that's one thing. If it's multiple floors, do you have an elevator? Do you have a lift? Are they labeled? Does this labeling include Braille for any who may be blind? Or again, too hard of seeing? Are you checking these things regularly? Do you have a maintenance schedule on them? And in terms of lights, do you have emergency lights if the power goes out so people won't be tripping and falling? If you have stairs, are there traction strips on them to make sure people won't slip and fall if they choose to use the stairs? Within the rooms, do you have a sound system for those who are hard of hearing? Are you aware of any brothers who have sensory issues or other types of impairments, suffer from panic attacks, anxiety attacks? Can you set up a system so if they need to leave, they can leave quietly so as not to draw attention to themselves and calm down? Do you have a quiet space for those who may be autistic and may have challenges with sensory overload as well? Take care, Courtney. Do you have a plan in place for those with disabilities if there's a fire alarm? Can you get them out of the building safely? Or do you need to let the fire department know who is left and where they are? And do you have a plan? Do you practice that plan? Do you have fire drills? I think every lodge should have at least one fire drill every couple of years at a minimum, maybe even every year. Would you consider getting, in Ontario, working together the code and the AODA training, teaching you how to support those with various types of abilities and disabilities? And I guess what I'd say is we should just remember having a disability puts you at risk for all sorts of challenges and problems, for isolation, for health risks, for poverty, for dying early. Being a Freemason has been shown to combat all of those things. As a consequence of that, I think it's incredibly important that we as Freemasons do what we can and as much as we can to support our brethren who may be challenged, who may be struggling. Oh, okay. Well, thank you still for being here, Courtney. And also just think about it in terms of applicants. We all know we're struggling to get applicants right now within Freemasonry. Imagine if, you know, a brother with a wheelchair is interested in joining, but he finds out there's no ramp, or if there is a ramp, it's not being maintained in good condition. There's no automatic doors, or if they are, they're not working. There's no elevator, or if there is, it's not working. And during rites and ceremonies, there's no brethren helping him, assisting him, making sure it goes off well by walking beside him and doing any work that needs to be done. Um, all of those things matter. And so just imagine, some Masonic buildings, some Masonic lodges, like my building, we have an elevator, it's great. Others, I've been to Masonic buildings where the elevator's not working and hasn't worked for months. Right? And so it's, I'm speaking about buildings in general, right? I'm just saying this could apply to Masons anywhere. This could apply to Masons in Texas, Masons in wherever it is, right? This is not about a specific building. This is about every building. And just saying, like Courtney's in Texas, and he said like his building doesn't have a ramp. If his building doesn't have a ramp and a brother and an applicant is interested in joining but is in a wheelchair, is he likely to go through if you go through, go to apply, you're in a wheelchair, there's no ramp, there's no automatic doors, etc., right? So it's about making sure that we are welcoming. Not only does that help our current brothers who may at a later day in time become disabled, it also helps new applicants and our currently disabled brethren be part of the craft. No, I think most buildings are in good condition. I'm not saying, I don't know if every building is in good condition or bad condition. What I'm saying is the better condition a building is in, the more likely we are to get brethren interested in joining of all different abilities. So your building may be in 90% good condition. Maybe try to get another 10%. See if you can get it up to that 100% perfect condition. What else can you do, right? Maybe your building is at 75% good condition. Can you get it up to 90%? It's not about being perfect or imperfect. It's about always trying to improve, always trying to do a better job. Because I've yet to visit any Masonic building in the world, and I've traveled around the world. I've yet to see any Masonic building that I would describe as being imperfect, perfectly accessible, and having nothing that could be made better. I've also never been to any Masonic building that I've visited where I've seen it that I've said, this is terrible, there's no redeeming qualities. Every Masonic building has things on which it can improve, and every Masonic building has things it's doing well. It's up to us to figure out which is which and what we can do to be better. Sorry about that. I think I went unlive for just 1 second. Yes, as Courtney says, right? It's about making sure that we are doing a good job and trying to improve. No one is expecting anything to be perfect, but we're expecting good effort and trying our best. All right, so now let's give it a few more minutes. Let's see who else joins. I'll probably be ending this stream soon, but I do want to give it a bit of time. See who else jumps in the chat to say hello. I will not be going live tonight because I don't do 1 a.m. streams on Friday. I may be going live actually this weekend on my personal channel as I get ready to travel. So just be prepared for that. Nice, Mr. Keeps. So what did you think about what I was saying? Do you have any suggestions? Also, what I should mention as well is there is also such a thing, and Mr. Keeps would know about this, him being here reminded me of it. There is such a thing as accessibility as it relates to online spaces, right? Like using alt text on images, for example, is really important. Again, for those who may be vision impaired and have a hard time seeing images on a computer. Um, I do my best actually to include alt text on images. I'm not the best at it though, so I'm kind of a hypocrite in that regard. But I do try my best to add alt text on images. So also, and maybe make, using fonts and background color that is easy to look at, especially for those who are vision impaired. Um, Having phone system that also has the option for those who are deaf, who use talk to type or talk to text. But I'm sure you are insanely excited, Mr. Keeps, as you should be. Enjoy the travels with your family. I'm sure you're going to love them. So it's at Cameron Adamson. So it's youtube.com/ at Cameron Adamson. I'll let you know that. It's slow, but it's growing. I got 300 subs, so 301 subs on there. I'm going to have to start packing as well. So, Michael Moore, afternoon. Hazelnut is the most delicious coffee. I mean, I just, for me, coffee is the most delicious coffee. The most delicious coffee is the coffee from Mr. Keeps, for the record. Michael Moore, thank you for being here. I hope that you are doing well. I don't know if you heard any of the things I was talking about with making our buildings accessible for those with disabilities and why it's important that we do so. If you have any thoughts on that, not just making our buildings, but making the Masonic experience successful, making the Masonic experience accessible for those with disabilities. Um, all right, well, if you have any thoughts on it, by all means, let me know. But yeah, I think, December 3rd was the International Day of Disabilities. I talked about different types of disabilities, things that we need to do to make sure we are successful at being inclusive. At no point does it mean we need to be completely inclusive, because I don't think perfection is possible, right? I think it's always going to be a challenge. However, we should regularly be thinking, what more can we do, right? So, every few months, go through your lodge, look at what is good, what is accessible, what is inclusive, and what isn't, and then figure out what you can do to improve. It's a continual state of improvement. But as I pointed out, I've seen this happen. Lodges install a ramp, but they're in a climate where they never think about. They're in a climate where they get a lot of snow and ice. They never think about who is going to shovel the ramp, who is going to shovel a path. So you end up with all this snow. You have a ramp, but you can't access it because there's a bunch of snow, or you can get to it, but there's a bunch of snow and ice on the ramp that makes it dangerous, right? I agree. The key word there is slowly but surely. I think in some cases we could probably be a little bit quicker, but I think we are taking really good strides forward. So I think we just need to keep up the good work. I hope, and you can go back and listen to my talk. I started at about the 1 hour, 15-minute mark. I think we can definitely, what's the word I'm looking for? Definitely maybe take some of my advice. And by the same token, maybe give me some advice. I could very well be missing some stuff that I did not think of. Oh, isn't that a wonderful feeling, Michael Moore? Isn't that a wonderful feeling when you know you're going to be a past master? How great it feels. Although what I find is you never actually make it out. There you go, a Windsor temple. So I don't know, Mr. Keeps, what do you find? I know you're busy packing, so you're probably not paying attention, and you shouldn't be. I'd be focused on Peru as well. But what do you think about online accessibility, alt text, creating websites that are accessible? Like, what are some of the things you've seen in that regard? Even security, like, if let's say you need to put in a password but you're blind, I mean, do you have your keyboard set up where it's like Braille keys, or do you have talk to text? How does that stuff work? And don't forget, you can also do a super chat before we go if you want. If you don't, no worries. I'm just happy to have you here. I only know the Windows. Okay, wait, that's one thing I didn't think of though. So it's a good thing that you reminded me. Windows magnifier. That's another great example of uh, online online accessibility. And also, I should mention as well, it might be worth if you have a brother who, let's say he's completely hard of, like, can't see at all, make sure you have at least a couple Braille ritual books on hand to give him because he can't read the ritual book without the Braille, right? I think most lodges, to be honest, I don't think most lodges store those. I know they exist, but I think we need to be storing them. Most lodges will order it if a brother comes in and needs it, which better to have it on hand. Again, because even having it on hand, it just shows you're thinking about them. Like if I'm blind and I come to a Masonic lodge meeting, and if I'm blind and I join, and then I'm told, "Oh, we ordered your book for you because we didn't have any, you know, books with Braille on hand," but the brother who joined with me, let's say two of us joined, the brother who joined with me gets his book right away, right? I might take slight offense to that. Might maybe not enough to leave, but I'd be like, you probably should have been thinking about us as well. And maybe, for those brethren who um, have trouble seeing, have trouble reading small print, but they're not blind, they can still read. Maybe a fun thing to do, they probably have one of their own, but a fun thing to do might be to store a few special magnifiers that you can purchase at the store. Maybe order a few of those, get your actual lodge name and lodge number on it, so it's like a souvenir, and give it to the brother when he gets his book. It's just a cool souvenir. You can give it out to others as a gift. But B, it's really fun because, you show that you're thinking about them. Going mouth to ear, going old school, that would be great. But I think the problem with doing that exclusively for the brother who is blind is it kind of singles him out. I think either everybody goes mouth to ear or no one goes mouth to ear, right? Especially when there's other options available. Like for me, when it comes to the steps, I can't take the steps or I can't take the prescribed movements. So there's no choice but for another brother to do it for me. Um, but when you say, okay, the blind brother, it's mouth to ear exclusively, for this guy, he gets the book. I wouldn't be comfortable with that if I was the blind Mason, especially because we know that there are books in Braille, ritual books in Braille that do exist. I don't know if every jurisdiction has them, but I've seen them before in different jurisdictions. Um, I would try my best, Courtney. I can't promise, but I'm going to absolutely try my best. And that's one more thing I should mention. I forgot to. So I've talked about disability. Uh, you know, I've talked about physical. I've talked about mental or sensory issues, right? For example, if somebody suffers from anxiety or panic attacks, what to do, how to accommodate that, allowing them to sit close to the door, to leave without ceremony. There's another type of disability or medical condition, traumatic brain injury. And some people can get traumatic brain injury where they're not able to remember things. Like they're just not able to do memory work. In those cases, maybe accommodation means requesting dispensation to allow that brother to read from the book for whatever office he is in. If he's a junior warden, senior warden, worshipful master, allow him to read from the book. Um, Explain it. Maybe if you feel you need to, you can get a doctor's note. I would say you got to trust the brother. Um, well, Memento was like I like that movie a lot, actually. Memento. It's a great movie. Not like I knew a brother who he was in a car accident. Well, he was actually hit by a car. He was in a car accident. The car hit him as he was crossing the street. The person driving was distracted. It's a miracle he's alive. But he hit his head, and one of the consequences was like he could remember like he remembered me and he remembered what happened the day before in a general sense, like he could live his life, but he wasn't able to remember, like he couldn't memorize anything. He could, if he knew it before, he could know it again, but he couldn't memorize like a new piece of work. If he got a new phone number, he couldn't memorize it. He had to like write it down. Um, you know, uh, um, if like he was told like new directions to get to a place, he couldn't remember it. He had to use his Google map. Traumatic brain injury will do that to you, right? Will affect your memory, will affect your ability to memorize things, will even affect short-term memory sometimes, along with all the other effects of well, no, he's not, because he can remember, like he knows he has a job, he knows what the job is, he knows all that stuff. He remembers what can happen. But if you ask him, like, okay, memorize 5 pages of work, he's not going to be able to do that, you know? Um, Again, at work, he could remember basic things. So not quite Mr. Keeps, but more like if I gave him 5 pages to memorize, he would not be able to memorize it, right? Memorization and memory just really struggle for him. Distractions, I'm talking about Freemasonry, distractions from power. If you have any thoughts on Freemasonry, please let me know. Positive, negative, or neutral, I'd love to hear them. I am going to be ending this stream soon, but please hit like and subscribe. And I don't know which power, from which power you are a distraction, but, cool name. So just be aware of traumatic brain injury. Be aware that not every disability is visible. You can't see every disability. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't take them into account. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I've argued in the past that part of the application process should require a medical check, because by learning the medical conditions and abilities and disabilities of an applicant, you can hopefully in advance tailor the experience to better kind of fit within his abilities. I mean, even something as simple as if it's an older brother and he has difficulty sitting for long periods of time, let him know, if you need to get up at any point and stretch, feel free to do so. We don't want him uncomfortable in lodge, but being afraid to stand up and stretch because he doesn't know if it's okay or not okay. It's about information. And again, part of that falls on the Mason. I'm a big believer it's personal responsibility as well. If you have struggles, you have a responsibility to let the brothers know that you have struggles, that you have challenges, and how they can best accommodate those. And how you can best accommodate them to the lodge as well. It's not all on the lodge. You have responsibilities. I, as someone with a wheelchair, have responsibilities as well. I can't be the worshipful master and then say, I have a wheelchair, so you have to, accommodate whatever me not showing up. That's not how it works. All right, guys, we are going to be. That is very true. I think that's right. I think God is beyond words. God is beyond words. Um, I've always described my understanding of the Supreme Being as being reflected in the rational nature of the universe. When you see mathematical equations that describe a rational universe, I think you are looking at the face of God, or the face of the Supreme Being, to use a Masonic term. All right, guys, this has been fun. I hope you'll take my ideas into consideration in your Masonic experiences. Thank you, and Mr. Keeps, have a great trip. You deserve it. I'm sure it'll be an absolute blast. No worries, Courtney. Thank you for being here. Talk to you soon.